This doesn't make sense. Hmm. Let me send the link to these people. Yeah, it's live. I- Okay, we have 10 now. Hey guys, can you give me a thumbs up or something on chat on YouTube comments as comments here, so I know that you have joined. And also we can add your questions on comments. I can show it here like this. Yeah, thank you guys. Hi Mikul Patel. Uh, Hi Sushil. Guys, this is also on Facebook. It's on my profile, my name, if you want to use it on Facebook. 18. Hey Aman. Jason, I think we can get started.
Sure.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. Today I have with me Jason Decruz. Jason is an IIMA 2009-11 graduate. Jason is currently a senior product manager at Atlassian and has previously worked with Inmobi and Electronic Arts. Welcome, Jason. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
The pleasure is mine, Jason. So, Jason, how did you end up in product management? So, did you always wanted to do product management, or did it happen by accident? Because I see that you started your career in feedback as a consultant post MBA. So, how did that move happen from consulting to product? Can you walk us through your professional journey?
It's an interesting question. So I've previous to I started off actually being a software developer before my MBA. So I was always interested in the technical aspects of it, tech, mobile, whatever. And after my MBA, as you mentioned, I did join management consulting because I did love the aspects of consulting, like problem solving, strategizing, and hopefully seeing things through to completion rather than just presenting some sort of a PowerPoint presentation. Around the year 2012, I think a few things happened. I was starting to feel that I wanted to get back into tech. I also wanted to move back to Bangalore at the time, and I wanted something which would give me some of the joys that I had in consulting, such as finding problems to solve and making an impact. And product management was relatively new at the time, I think. Like even now, what exactly a product manager does is pretty different. But around that time, it was a bit new, at least to me. And I actually found a role in Bangalore with Inmobi as advertising for a product manager. And I had one of my dorm mates, Rohan Chowdhury, or Sheru, which was his dorm name, who was working there. So he set up, like a referral for me, and then the rest is history. I moved into Inmobi, and I've not looked back since.
So, how did you manage to get your first gig? I mean, that you were referred by someone, but what do you think made things work in your favor? How did you convert this interview?
Actually, Inmobi was a pretty long interview process. I think I spoke to 9 or 10 different people. In talking about the interview per se, of course, I had some tips from Rohan, who referred me in terms of what would be asked and what I should kind of focus on. But the interviews was very similar to a consulting interview, minus the whole structured case study format. It was more about take some sort of a product that what would you improve, or what new feature would you add to something? And it was nothing very specific to Inmobi, but it was general things. I remember being asked about something about my Nexus phone at the time. And the questions were more designed to make you think about things, and for the interview to understand how you go about thinking about a problem, and how do you structure the problem, how do you consider the various aspects. So altogether not very different from consulting, but a very similar thing. So basically they wanted to know how does your thinking work? Do you have problem solving capabilities, and will you be fun to work with? And I guess I fit all those three aspects.
Inmobi, then Electronic Arts, and Atlassian. So, how was your experience in each of them, and what was different in each of them?
That's interesting question. Again, so Inmobi was kind of B2B almost, but in the advertising space. Electronic Arts was a totally consumer-focused product. I was building a mobile game, and Atlassian, as we all know, is in the B2B SaaS space. I think the experiences have been very different, but there have been some uniting factors in terms of the cultures of the company being very similar in the autonomy that they give you in order to build the things that you're working on, in terms of the impact where you're reaching a really large portion of customers. I can give you some examples. So at Inmobi, we were working on basically ad serving at the time. That's what I was doing. I was trying to make sure that Inmobi's ad serving engine would be able to perform at scale and also be able to surface the corresponding ads to make sure that we also maximized our revenue as well as kind of reduce fraud. So again, it was on a really large scale. There was a lot of data involved to see where we could actually optimize. Electronic Arts was the same. I was working primarily on a racing game called Real Racing 3, where we would put out updates every 6 weeks to players, and we would have millions of players across the world. So you had like a lot of data coming in from telling you what they wanted, and we had to balance our business goals on the side as well. In Atlassian, I work at Jira Service Desk. It's a product targeted at IT and other business teams. And again, we have a really large audience, and we get a lot of feedback from customers about what they actually want in terms of the product, and then we kind of figure out what to build, which also aligns with our business goals. So vastly different products, but I think the principles behind them are very similar.
So did you make these moves because of the product or the company? Because I see.
So I think in Mobi, I was looking to move into product management for a number of reasons, and the company really appealed to me. I happened to make a move to Australia, which was unrelated to product management itself. So once I moved into Australia, I wanted to stay in the field of product management and again find some job in the field where again I would be able to reach multiple customers, have fun with the work that I'm doing, and EA absolutely fit that bill. So that was the reason why I decided to move to EA and spent a large number, I think 3 to 4 years at EA. The move to Atlassian actually came about due to a few reasons. One was that I felt I was not learning as much as I could at EA. I was doing a lot of the same kind of work, putting out updates 6 weeks out of 6 weeks. It's great, but in terms of where I wanted to go with my mastery of the craft, I thought I could learn some more. Secondly, that variety of having spent so much time in the B2C space, I wanted to try something else. And again, if you look at Australia, at least Atlassian is probably among the top or the top company to work for from a product management standpoint. And especially there are a few really good product managers at Atlassian who've done like a lot of talks in the Australian product scene, and that was another reason as well.
Got it. So how did you move to Australia? I mean, I think your first job in Australia was with EA, right? Like, what is the move? Like, how did you find a job in Australia? Or you moved to Australia and you found a job. How did it work?
Yeah, so moving to Australia was a part of a long-term plan, and I just applied for a skilled independent visa. I got the visa, which allows me work rights in Australia, but it doesn't mean that I have a job. So I went to Australia. I was still with Inmobi. I was working from home effectively. I did not know at the time whether I actually wanted to settle down in Australia, so I was there for a few months. And I was working, with the team in Bangalore from Inmobi. And I think after 3 months, the generosity offered by them, kind of meant that I either had to, come back to Bangalore, or if I decided to, stay in Australia, that product management would not really work. So then I started looking out for a job and landed EA. But it was not a very simple or straightforward process. Like, you decide to make a move and then things happen, and then you figure out the best decision.
Right. So you applied for the PR and then you moved there and then things worked out for you.
Yes.
But any specific reason for Australia?
I think quality of life, I would say. And also I have a family here, and is also
okay.
The ease of moving to a country, like for the US, for example, I'd probably have to be sponsored by someone to be able to move, whereas in Australia, I could, make the move myself. And then the other consideration is, of course, the availability of jobs. I'd also considered New Zealand and Canada, but it ultimately settled on Australia.
How has it been for you living in Australia, working as a product manager? You find any differences of working as a product manager outside India and working in Australia and India?
That's a good question. I think the differences are less about the country that you work in, but it's more about the company and the culture that you work in. So from that point, I think it's differences are usually more company oriented. That being said, I think the one big difference I found working in Atlassian or EA as opposed to working at Inmobi was the I would say like the diversity in terms of where the talent comes from. Like in Inmobi, even though we had a US office and we had product managers over there, my team in Bangalore was entirely from India, whereas at EA and at Atlassian there are several nationalities because people from all over the world want to come to Australia. And that means that you're going to get a lot of very different perspectives and different cultures and different ways of working. And I think that's probably the biggest difference.
Jason, can you walk us through the day in life of you as a product manager? I mean, it could be at Atlassian or you can pick Atlassian. So what does a day-to-day life look like? What are the things you're working on?
I think I'd rather, maybe I could talk about Atlassian and talk about a whole week as opposed to a day, because there are different things which are done during the course. Yeah. I tend to take one day we call it get shit done day, which is basically I do whatever it is I need to do, which is write out a spec or do some customer research or talk to customers or analyze the competition, basically work that I can do on my own. I am a full-time remote product manager at Atlassian. So even before the whole COVID situation, I was working remote and I have like a remote team. As part of that, there are a lot of rituals that we do in order to stay connected as a team, which is, we have our working sessions where all of us join a Zoom call and we are just there. We're doing our own thing to kind of simulate the feeling of an office. We have daily catch-ups. We have times that we spend socially over Zoom again. So a lot of these team-centric things. Also, in terms of the whole product lifecycle, I think what we're doing at some point of time is basically identifying what problems you have to solve. And I think that's a really big part of the job. If you get that right, you get most of it right. And spending time kind of refining that problem, doing more customer research, that happens day to day. And then it gets down to, okay, how do you work as a team to figure out how do you go about these problems and how do you align it to your business goals in order to get buy-in from leadership? Again, you're working on some things of that during the day as well. And then there are meetings. There are a lot of meetings. There are product meetings. There are triad meetings. And when I say triad, our team has a designer, an engineering manager, and a product manager, and we work together to figure out what the team needs to work on. So we have those meetings. There are meetings with various stakeholders, like a lot of one-on-ones. Apart from the work, there are all these other things that you have to do as well.
From someone's on YouTube. It keeps coming again and again. What is the difference between a product owner and a product manager?
This is a good one because at least from what I've seen from in Australia, can you hear me? Hello?
Jason, you're live.
Can you hear me? You said something.
Yeah, I can hear you. I switched off you by mistake instead of switching me. Yeah.
No worries. So I think from my experience here in Melbourne, people tend to use these terms of fit interchangeably. If you ask me how I would think of how they are different, I would think that a product owner is more involved in the execution part of it. So when I see roles for product owner, it's more about defining the vision, but also managing the team's backlog, organizing the sprints, figuring out what should be done at an execution perspective. Whereas in terms of a product manager, I think it's more about what you do a bit most on the strategic side and less of the backlog. For example, at Atlassian and even at EA, I never touched the backlog at all. So it was more about trying to get a shared understanding between the team and telling them what problems they should be solving and letting the team come up with their solutions and manage that themselves. That would be the difference that I see.
So you don't work that much with the engineering team, is it?
We work a lot with the engineering team, but I tend to stay away from actually, putting in user stories and creating the sprints. That's something which I don't do. Okay. I kind of focus on figuring out this is the problem that we need to solve. This is our timelines. This is what we are measuring, and then work with the engineering team to define those goals and those milestones, and they handle the execution.
So you define what to be solved, but you don't fully get into the scrums or sprints of actually getting it done with the engineering team.
I do go to stand-ups every day, so I'm kind of involved in the day-to-day work, but I'm not actually managing that work. For a product owner, they are possibly deciding these many story points go into one particular sprint and things like that. I don't do that.
So as a product owner, essentially a scrum master who is just trying to follow the agile process?
Again, different companies have different definitions of this. You could call that person a project manager, for example, or even like a scrum master. You could have somebody else setting the vision. In my experience, I've seen a product owner do a bit of both. They kind of define what needs to be built, but they also manage the execution. Right. Whereas a product manager is more at the strategic level, but hands off the execution.
Got it. So I have other questions now. Since a lot of these fresh graduates are attending this, I thought let's pick this one. So how should one go about preparing for an APM role, or who's just joining you into first product?
I think I'm probably showing my age over here, because I think how you prepare for an APM role now may be different from the time when I was looking to get into it. But I think a lot of the requirements still stay the same. From what I see, what people look for in an APM role is the ability to problem solving, that kind of capability, which is not too dissimilar from consulting. Right. Problem solving, be able to analyze things, think critically, and being able to demonstrate that you have that ability to work with people, which is kind of stressed more, I think, over here. At least that's my experience. Right. I think there are a lot of resources online these days which really help you prepare for a product manager role. But I would say what you could do is think of some of the products that you like. Think of what are the issues you face within those products. Putting yourself as one sort of customer, trying to identify what persona you are, and figure out how you would go about making changes to that. Just kind of doing those exercises in your head will help you think about it. And also, if you're preparing for like a role in the tech space, read a lot of TechCrunch and other sites, know what's happening in the world of tech.
Yeah, absolutely, because even when we go to recruit for product analysts or APM, the main quality we are looking for is problem solving, communication, stakeholder management, and a genuine curiosity of how things work. So we don't actually look at whether this person knows coding or whether he's from a tech background. But it's a plus. It's definitely a plus, because we don't need to handhold them. But the skill set that we look for in an APM or product analyst is basically this problem solving, discernment, and all these things.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So there is this question about roadmap. So what are the different aspects involved in roadmap creation, and how often a roadmap gets revised? And what does roadmap meeting looks like in Atlassian?
A roadmap meeting. Let me think about how you go about creating your roadmap, right? Like at least in Atlassian or even at EA, we need to first identify what the business wants to do in terms of their business goals. And there are usually there are goals set like, by quarter or by year, we want to hit these targets. Then what you do is you figure out what part of the product that you're working on, figure out what are the different problems your customers are experiencing in those, as part of those products. Then you kind of, figure out which problems actually help in solving these goals and how you would measure them. Once you kind of figure that out, you have a list of 2 to 3 things that you probably want to work on. Those are things which will help you move your business goals. On the other hand, there are some external deadlines that may happen. Like maybe there's something needs to be done because some other third party has some restrictions. So you'll have those kind of external deadlines which you can't really help, which will kind of figure out where it falls into your roadmap. The third kind of thing I would think about is dependencies. For example, your team is working on some part of the product, but you need to do some work in order to unblock someone else. So that's where you kind of negotiate. So once you figured out what problems are solving your business goals, what are your external non-company related deadlines, and any dependencies that you have to work on, you have a bucket of things that you need to do. The next part is sequencing this bucket where you actually prioritize and figure out what should fit in where. Any external things, they're non-negotiable and that easily falls into place. Regarding the other things, the way I probably go about it is to figure out how you put things on your roadmap which you can generate the most value. When I say value, I mean a mixture of customer and business value, and also iterate as you go along. I think the question also mentioned roadmap revisions. I think roadmap revisions happen fairly often. Like you need to be in a place and set expectations that things change, especially in the tech world. New things happening, very frequently. Company priorities change. You have to, respond to threats from the competition, things like that. So prepare for roadmaps to be revised as frequently as required. What we do tend to do is once we start a piece of work, we tend to make sure that work is completed before figuring out whether we need to continue with our roadmap or pivoting. And what really helps is to make sure that you break down the work into sizable chunks which can deliver value. So you're not spending 6 months on something and then you get stuck after 3 months and you do not know whether you need to pivot on or not. So I hope I've answered what it takes to generate that roadmap and how you kind of make that decision about when you need to pivot and change.
Absolutely. I think it comes from the top. You have company OKRs, then you understand what problems can solve these company OKRs, and you have a laundry list of backlogs, and then you go about prioritizing it. And as and when you know that you need to pivot and you need to prioritize something else, you kind of revise. Right?
Yeah.
So this is something I've always tried to understand, like how much has your MBA helped you in your day-to-day life as a product manager?
Good question. So increasingly I'm seeing a lot of product managers without an MBA, but I would like to think MBA, especially IIMA, has definitely helped me. And how to think about it, let me break it down. I think on the one hand is the content in terms of your curriculum and how that helps you. I think over there, I would say what's helped me the most is probably Excel. Excel, there was a course by Professor Dipesh Ghosh. I'm not sure whether he's still at IIMA on decision making. I think that's been really useful, and FRA as well. Like just understanding the financial aspects of it has been really useful. So that's from the content kind of perspective.
Right.
I think there's also a couple of other things, especially life at IIMA, and maybe this can't be generalized to any MBA, has taught you how to prioritize, right? Because you have only this much number of days. You need to figure out which case you want to prepare for. You also want to, go play soccer, or go and participate in the dance club or whatever, and then go to a consult club, meet up and still find the time, right? So they teaches you prioritization and time management. I think that's really useful when it comes to product management, and also the whole group dynamic and splitting the work, make things get to get things done. That's been really important as well. So I think the second part is these soft skills. The third thing I will say about is, like in my case, I mentioned it's the contacts, right? I wouldn't have got into product management if I didn't do my MBA because of the referral. So would say these three things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the MBA kind of gives you this mock work experience kind of an environment where everything is simulated in a academic environment, but it needs the same kind of skills to get it done. And of course, the network kind of helps in getting your opportunities. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, this is for again someone who is just starting up or is trying to switch. So, from your experience, what do you think companies evaluate in CVs and interviews, and what are the must-haves?
Let me speak less to CVs, because I think these days it's the recruiters who are doing the CV evaluation, and they come in. I can talk about interviews a bit. I think it differs based on the level that you're interviewing at. So I don't think there is a broad, one size fits all. Talking from an experienced product manager point of view, I think the focus is a lot on experience. If you're experienced in the same industry, it definitely helps. So they kind of look for that. They also look to see more of your leadership skills and how you manage to deliver outcomes, as opposed to the execution that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I would also think that, as I mentioned, problem solving ability and critical thinking, those are I would say those are must-haves. Increasingly, I've seen companies look for this social side of it. I would say hobbies, things like that. How will you get along in a team? What sort of things do you do outside of work? That's kind of gaining a lot of importance, especially in Australia. That's commonly talked about. So it's not just about your credentials, but also about how you are as a person.
Oh, got it. Debanjali. So we have Debanjali. What's the difference between user research methods used in EA and Atlassian?
Very good question. Research at EA and Atlassian has been slightly different, but not too different, I'd say. When talking about EA, we would have players who would come in, and we would test features, we would prototype features. We had our own UX research team where we would ask them a lot of questions on the qualitative side. On the quantitative side, we had data, and we had a lot of data. Because we have millions of players, you can easily generate statistically significant results from your data, and a lot of A/B testing as well. So that was the qualitative and quantitative piece at EA. In Atlassian, we focus a lot on customer interviews to get a sense of what customers are looking for and what their problems are. Where I think it differs is in the scale, because we kind of focus on maybe a few large customers to give us these leading trends, as well as we respond to tickets. There's a system in Atlassian called jira.atlassian.com where you can go in and submit any feedback or suggestions from about our products. There's also a community page where you can go and you can provide feedback. So combination of these customer interviews as well as getting information from these various sources, really helps. One place which is different from EA was on the data side that I mentioned. For example, I have a few million players playing a game. I can clearly figure out trends. Whereas how you use the products at say you're using Jira or Confluence, may be very different for your use cases. So it's not very easy to get data, especially significant data, to inform our decisions. So it's more qualitative on the enterprise side.
So you've switched a lot of industries. So how do you? So right now you're in GR service desk, which is an ITSM industry. So how do you go about getting these expertise in a new domain?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges for someone who's moved between industries. If you're staying in the same space, it's really easy. I don't think I was productive in my first couple of months because I was still trying to understand the space. I think the best way to understand the space is to talk to customers. You need to be speaking to customers as to how they use your product, and that helps you also understand what the workings of like an IT team is. For example, you would have some assumptions as to how an IT team works, but you wouldn't know the intricacies unless you've spoken to customers. The second thing is there are a lot of players in the space who publish research papers and reports. That's a good way of understanding how IT teams work. So if you take Jira Service Desk, you have like Forrester and Gartner who kind of publish reports as well. So you go and look at that. The other part is about just reading as much as you can about the space, especially if you look at ITSM. There is like a framework called ITIL, which usually people follow. So just understanding that, taking a few courses as well. I think as a generic sort of providing advice, I'll say put yourself in the shoes of the customers as much as possible to kind of like understand the industry and realize that it takes time. As long as you're willing to give yourself time. Like I'm still learning. I've been in Atlassian 1.5 years now, and I'm still learning about the IT industry. So it's an ongoing process.
I mean, what feature are you owning? Some features of the Jira Service Desk?
Yeah, but I probably wouldn't want to go into specific.
Yeah, sure. Okay, next question. Okay, yeah. What are the blogs or books that you follow? Are you part of any product communities that you're active part of?
I think Atlassian's product management function is really good. There are I think over 200 product managers at Atlassian. So there's a wealth of resources there. And product managers at Atlassian are encouraged to blog about things. So there are a lot of articles that you keep reading. There are a lot of talks being given. So you're constantly learning more. To me, that's been my biggest source. In terms of blogs, not much though. I've been reading this book recently called Decisive on how to make better decisions. So those are the books and the Atlassian product community. There are a lot of product meetups in like Melbourne as well. I've not been too active there, but occasionally go and listen to people from other companies in the city talking about their experiences.
So right. So Jason, what are the tools that you use in your day-to-day life as a product manager?
So there is Zoom, of course, and being like a remote product manager, you cannot work without some sort of video conferencing facility. We use Zoom, and we use Slack as well for messages. Being at Atlassian, we use a lot of Atlassian tools. So we use Confluence, for example. That's where all our specs, our roadmaps, any articles go. We use Jira for our backlogs, and we use the advanced roadmap feature in Jira for that. Increasingly, we've been using a tool called Mural, which we actually use, which I use with my teams. The design on my team championed that. We use that for brainstorming to almost replace like a whiteboard, for example, because I think the biggest problem, or not a problem, but the biggest challenge is to properly brainstorm. You are so used to doodling on a whiteboard and 3 or 4 people sharing ideas, and replicating that is a little hard.
Right. Okay. About the Jira roadmap thing, why is the roadmap available only on new gen board and not on the old board? And the new gen board is another workflows, man. I had to switch a couple of times from new gen board to the old board because the engineering team wants the workflows. I want the roadmap. Yeah.
I will pass your feedback back to the product managers in charge of that.
Yeah. We have already added those in the communities though. Right. Guys, keep adding your questions. I think we'll take Q&A now. How has it been for you switching to a work from home mode? I mean, was it difficult or?
Personally, I think it was very difficult to begin with, and originally when I decided to make this switch, the reason I opted to work remotely was because I couldn't move to Sydney for personal reasons, so I had to stay in Melbourne. Atlassian didn't have an office. It was hard because I'm used to spending time with people, developing those relationships, catching up over coffee, brainstorming over like a whiteboard or something like that. So it has been hard. The other thing that I missed about the office was the fact that I really I discounted how much the commute and just walking up and downstairs actually gives you the exercise that you need. So I think those two aspects were pretty difficult at first. I've since come to feel that I'm more in control of how I work, when I work, and also I think I'm a bit more productive working from home now. And after the whole COVID situation, I feel that I'm in a much better position as potentially some of the other people who are just trying to do this now.
So you have been working from home even before COVID?
Yes. So I joined as a fully remote product manager. So I've been working from home from January last year.
Okay. Now the entire world is now adopted to the mode that you were on.
Yeah. And our team, which has been fully remote, has tried to help the other teams, talking about best practices and things like that.
Okay. So this is something like, how do you keep yourself focused? I mean, because I've seen a lot of people working from home, their personal space and their home kind of interferes. I mean, I've seen my manager himself, he has a kid. So for him, giving that space between the kids and the home, setting that boundaries between personal and work space in a work from home setting. How did you manage to do it?
It's a very good question because it's actually difficult and it plays a bigger toll, or it takes a bigger toll than you actually realize. Like, for example, so previously when I joined Atlassian, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So my office was in the middle of my living room, and it did cause some problems. I think I moved to a new place where I have my own office, my study. So I think that really helps. Just the fact that when I come into the study, I'm working, and when I leave the study, I'm not working, just creates that mental, division between home and work.
Right.
The other thing is, I've tried this in the past. It worked for a little while, but so what I tried to do was, actually dress up like you're going to work, like the things that you wear that you're going to work, as opposed to just like working in your shorts and a t-shirt. Well, though if you're in the tech space, people come to office like that anyway. But to me, just that mental thing, I put on my shoes and then I sit down and then I take off my shoes and I'm done with work. That kind of helped. I don't do it anymore because to me, this whole study itself has kind of delineated that. Right. I don't have kids, so I can't really tell you how hard it is to manage.
Yeah, kids. Because when we're going to office, I think going to the office, that gives us physical space that, okay, now we're in work, and that kind of separated out. And I think working from home, you need these physical or these like something like that tells you that you're in a work mode and personal mode. And I think setting up your own office.
Actually, the boundaries are still blurred, right? Because like sometimes I have to go and like make lunch in the middle of the day, so I'm like working, and then there's something in the garden, or like the delivery person comes, and I have to go attend that. So no matter how much you try, you're still blurring those lines.
Right.
Sometimes what happens is you tend to, it's like say 4:30. I have half an hour more. Do I actually want to work? Like I'll come back in the night because I can.
Right.
And sometimes you end up doing that. I'm trying to work till the end of the day, but then put a stop to it. But it's hard.
Okay. So I have a question from Aman Kumar. So what steps do you take related to change management that increases user adoption? I mean, is it something that you can even do? Answer? Would love to.
I'm not sure I understand the question correctly. You're saying it takes change management that increases user adoption.
I think it's related to the ITL process. You have problem, release, and change. It's very specific to change a particular feature.
Yeah, maybe clarify with Aman what the exact question is, because user adoption, I can talk about change management, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because even
I find that particularly useful.
That's true. I think maybe that in a service test, there are not a lot of takers for ITIL or change management. I think maybe he's asking that, but I'll let Aman get back to me on that. I'll take the next one. So this again from Debanjali. What core skill sets should someone at mid-management product role build to grow in their career?
It's an interesting one. I think three things. The first one, what I probably say, is the ability to make quick and accurate decisions. Like we talk about product management, being involved in decision making, but it's more about getting the team together and figuring out how you can make quick and accurate decisions. That's something that we should always try to get better at, but this really helps going forward. The second thing is I'll talk about this thing about building a shared understanding. As a product manager, you want to empower the team that you're working for to actually deliver things. And that comes when everyone understands what customer problems they're solving, why is this important, and then just leave it to them to figure out the execution. So as long as you're building that shared understanding, I think that's really good. The third thing, which is kind of talked about like a lot, is this. They call it stakeholder management and perception building. But essentially, at a mid-management product role, you kind of need to build your brand. People need to know that you are the person to contact for X and Y, and also to kind of manage expectations as to what you can deliver, what your team is capable of delivering, and controlling that kind of narrative. So those are the three things I mentioned.
So there is this another question from Kaushik. Would building a mobile or web app as a side project add value to the same for product? I think it's someone who wants to get into product.
I think if you're wanting to get into product, definitely doing something like this really adds value. Especially if you can tie your web or your mobile app to any business value created, maybe in terms of user engagement, and or if you made money through your app, that really shines out. When you say building, I would think that you don't necessarily have to code it yourself, but as long as you have like an idea and a business case for it, that definitely adds value. And also, it gives you something to talk about in an interview.
Yeah, absolutely, because it shows intent, and it also tells the interviewer that okay, this person has at least some skills to start with.
Yeah.
This is from Nikhil Patel. How do you prioritize between solutions for scale versus solving the immediate issue, short term versus long term?
So let me draw a distinction between long-term and scale, because to me the two are different. Like when you're building for scale, it may be short-term as well.
Okay.
I think I'll draw a distinction between your long-term and your immediate issues.
Sure.
When you think about building things, you want to be thinking about building a long-term, scalable, and a sustainable solution. The issues, though, is that it's hard to actually go down that route. And the reasons are, as when I mentioned in an earlier question, things change and you kind of pivot pretty frequently depending on what the changes are. So coming up with a 2-year vision or a 6-month or even like a 1-year vision may be really good, but the core is to break it down into small pieces so that you can actually show incremental value while building towards the long term. When you talk about solving immediate issues, we have this thing at Atlassian which is called KTLO, which is effectively keeping the lights on. And what we try to do is, while we are building towards all the big new shiny things that we want to do, which will delight our customers and get new customers, we also need to take care of some immediate issues. As I mentioned, there could be some external deadlines coming in. So it's always a balance. Typically, what happens is that you tend to focus on the short term because there is a deadline after deadline. There's no real great answer I can give you to say this is like a silver bullet. But as long as you have some sort of team or resources or some time spent on these keeping the lights on things and solving for the short term, you can then focus on building for the long term and building incrementally. I hope that answers your question.
So I think we're done with the questions now. I just want to end with like a few final questions. Like, are you happy with the decision of moving to product management? I mean, looking back at your journey.
It's an interesting one. So I think the question is happy in relation to what, right? Like if I think about consulting or product management or just working, I would say yes. I think product management has been great.
Okay.
It's been really good in the sense that I've been able to work on a variety of issues across different industries, doing something in a field that I love. So I think that's been great. If you look at the larger context of life, would I prefer to be relaxing on the beach and maybe playing the piano? I'd probably say no. So it depends.
Okay. Right. But in a career-wise, you will do product-wise. I mean, is there any other career that you would want to pursue apart from product management?
I think, knowing what I know now, I would probably say no. Nothing else other than product management. The reason being is that tech is kind of taking over the world. We can keep saying that like software is eating the world. So anyone looking to get into product management, you can only see the demand for good product managers rising. So it's definitely a career that you want to get in. And where I'm comparing it to consulting because that's the next best thing that I was thinking about. I think the big difference is with consulting, it felt like I would be creating a good presentation and a plan, but not actually seeing it through to execution. Whereas in product management, you actually take it through to execution and you get feedback from customers, telling you whether you did a good job or a really shitty job. And, it's like feedback, and that makes the impact.
Absolutely, because I see a product management role is similar as a consultant, just that as a consultant, you just tell them what to do, but as a product manager, you actually get it done. And I think that kind of gives me the satisfaction of building something. Which you may not get as a consultant. Okay. So, what advice would you give, or advice of what from your own experience to someone who's just starting out, someone who has like 4 to 5 years of experience? What are the advices will you give to these different set of people who are?
So I'm saying, okay, so someone who wants to start out and get into product management, I would say get in straight away, because the earlier you are in the field, the quicker you can rise to the top. And I think the fact that I actually went down being a software developer, moving into management consulting, and then getting into product management means I kind of, spent years that I could have been, building great products. So I think it's really good if you want to get into it to, do like an internship with a top tech company, and start off there. For people who are in the field, I'm not really sure what advice I could give that would be, useful to them, because I think personalities and things that matter to you change. For me, one thing was about getting, learning as much as I can and getting an exposure to different industries. So for me, the path that I've taken kind of makes sense, but it may not make sense for people. I've seen people who worked in a single company for 10 years and they've really liked it. So I probably would refrain from giving any advice to experienced people because they probably know way more than I do.
The last question from Aman Kumar. So it's regarding KPIs. How do you decide on metric to measure the success of a product and ensure that the stakeholders are aligned with the metrics?
Metrics is one of the most important things, and it's also one of the really hard things to do.
Yeah.
And we've constantly seen that as a problem. When we talk about metrics, the way to approach metrics, and there are metrics at different levels. At one level, you want to be able to show the impact as it results to your business goals. For example, if your business goals is to make X million dollars per year, then you kind of need to tie the feature that you're doing to that goal. And the problem there is actually figuring out how exactly this feature impacts that goal. So that metrics is probably easy to define, but pretty hard to actually measure the impact of. At a second level, there are various other metrics that you may want to track, which is not related to your business goals. For example, like you may want to track usage, or you may want to track customer satisfaction. Like maybe people are using the feature that you did, which is really good, but maybe it's not the reason why they are paying for it. So you're probably creating customer value there, but not business value, because it's not tied to the business goal, but it's still an important metric to measure. A couple of things I'll point out is, I'll say, one, do not try to measure too many metrics. It just makes a mess. So try to be clear, one metric for your business goals, and maybe a couple of metrics which identifies what you think will make this feature a success. The second point is around baselining. When I talk about baselining, when you have a metric, it's usually you're improving by X%, or you are like reducing time taken by Y%. Identifying first what the baseline is can be hard, and you may need to spend some time to get a good baseline before you actually define the metric. The second thing around that is these percentages. It's really hard, and you can model all you want, but a few changes in your assumptions in an Excel formula can change it from 10% to 50%. So I think you always try, you have like this moonshot, but you kind of grow incrementally. And so I just want to address the second part of his question, was how are the stakeholders aligned? If your metric aligns with the business goals, they are aligned. If your metric doesn't align with the business goals, it's going to be a real.
Yeah. I lost you. Hello. Yeah. So yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So yeah, valid point. Like the metrics itself comes down from what business value and what is the problem that we are solving. Is it a retention problem? Is it a new customer acquisition problem? And depending on that, you kind of frame what metric to apply in each of them. I think with that question, we'll end the session. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jason, for taking your time out and doing this session with us. And thanks everyone for attending this session. This will be available on YouTube for future consumption. And thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. Thanks a lot for having me on and for hosting this as well. Like, for people who are watching, if you want to get in touch or have any other questions related to product management, I think Madhi has shared my LinkedIn details, so feel free to get in touch with me. Thanks again.
Bye, guys.